Hello everyone, welcome back. So I wanted to talk about the no-no gods today, the dark gods, the ones that come with a warning label. So this is something that came up kind of recently in my own craft, and I just had to stop and take a moment to really question it. And once I did, it was better, but I wonder how many times other people don't know that they can do that or that they have. So this is just kind of my journey with it, and hopefully it will give you ideas. So my very first encounter with like the bad, dark, no warning label gods was when I started to work with the Morrigan many moons ago. So she is a goddess back in those times, back in like ye olden internet, that every single website, everywhere I looked said no. It's a hard pass. Do not touch. She will mess up your life. She will curse you. She will cause havoc and destruction. Do not invite her in. You can know about her. You can know about her myths. Do not call upon her. Do not honor her. Do not try to make a relationship with her. Nothing but bad will come. And being a teenager, I don't like being told no. So I was like, no. So I just was like, listen, there's a lot of stuff that's written bad about you, but I feel like that's probably a misconception. And lo and behold, now there are plenty of resources that say the otherwise. There are books about working with her. There are channels and websites and like Etsy shops and like, so even like, I think there's like a Morrigan retreat every year. Like she has gained momentum in the world now where it's not a warning label goddess. Now some people do like to gatekeep her a little bit and say that only she can choose her followers and stuff like that, and that you have to be a specific like type of personality to work with her. Personally, I feel like if you have any kind of a connection with her at all, go for it. Typically she's not gonna say no, but if she does, that's fine, move on to somebody else. And sometimes it's just not the right time. I've had that with Caradwyn. She told me no, and then later came into my life, was like, now's a good time. Out of the blue, that made absolutely no sense, but like here we are. With that in mind, as you guys know, I have been working more and more with the Norse gods, and that was not a decision I came to lightly, because the Norse Asatru heathen community is like super toxic, and it's a video in and of itself of my experience with all of their chaos, but specifically I've really been hesitant to talk about it, and most of the time when I do, inevitably I will get comments from the hardcore people of those communities that come on over, and I've had the Havamal quoted at me where there's like one or two stanzas that talk about how like you shouldn't trust a woman, you shouldn't listen to anything she says because it's all lies. Go figure, a text written down by Christians from like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago didn't like women to speak. Go figure. And how the world has changed over time. You know, so it's like, it's a lot. Their communities are intense, and in research that I've been doing for my own that I decided to talk about today, there's like apparently a big debate on like heathenry and like the occult. We kind of fall into the occult category apparently, of witchcraft and things. And that those two things should not go together. And I was like, okay, whatever, dude. But like, seriously, I get nervous talking about them. So I didn't want to work much with the Norse gods, but they're very insistent. And so progressively I've been like, all right, let's just see where it goes. Because I've never felt anything towards an entire pantheon of wanting to know all the gods. I've really stuck in my itty bitty little Wiccan box of you have a goddess and a god. And then in 2020, end of 2020, when my grandfather passed away, that opened the door to having 3 main deities. And I was like, okay, this feels weird. Because like, the one isn't replacing the other. Now it's a triplet, which I don't do. I wasn't raised Christian, so it wouldn't make sense for me to even remotely have like a 3 situation. Like it just didn't. No, you have the goddess and the god. That's all you had for your representations. They were your matron and your patron, and that's what you went with. And then I had 3. And then progressively, as I've worked more with them, it's been like, maybe I should work with them too. Look into them a little bit. And so progressively I've been looking into more and more of the Norse. And so as you do that, naturally you come across some that have a warning label. The most famous that everyone has talked about since I started on this path 13 years ago is that Loki comes with a very big warning label. Everyone knows that. He will incite chaos. And sometimes people need that, and they really thrive with him. And some people, I think, use that as an excuse to be a dick, and that it's an excuse to just allow things and to let the gods treat you in a certain way. Whether or not it is actually the deity and their own ego taking over is up for debate. But like, we all know that Loki is the one that usually gets like the warning label, but people still work with him, right? I've talked with Loki a couple of times in meditations and stuff, and for the most part, he's civil and it's just like, me and you, not a thing. Listen, Thor over there, he's the one who wants to talk to you. Go talk to him. And it's like, fine. Because at the time I was wanting all of this change and stuff, and it's like, no, you gotta do it his way, not my way. You know, at this point, I'm planning for 2023 to have a very intensely magical year. I'm planning a lot of like different holidays, not just the 8 for the Wheel of the Year. I'm incorporating different holidays and different sacred days and stuff. And so because of that, naturally, like, I have a day dedicated to Loki now. The thing is, as I was looking into it and looking into all of the different gods and like starting to plan this out, of course you come across those that have warning labels. And some in those communities would argue that you shouldn't work with the not Asir, Asir, whatever gods. Odin's group, basically, of gods. And that, you know, like the giants and whatnot are the no-nos. Like, the whole group, just no. But then there's kind of some leeway, and then there's a handful that are just like, no, do not touch. And really high up on that list, higher than Hel, which kind of has her own, like, do you want to work with that kind of a goddess vibes? The one that, like, most often everyone is just like, oh my god, no. And the reason being, he's supposed to kill Odin, and that is Fenrir. So here's a very brief recap of the myth. So Loki has 3 really famous children. Fenrir is the oldest. He is a wolf, and he continues to grow. His appetite continues to grow. The gods are nervous about this. Somehow or another, Odin gets the prophecy that this wolf will eventually kill him. So Odin is the god of anxiety. If you haven't read the myths, he's a god of anxiety. He's constantly trying to fix things that haven't happened yet and trying desperately to be as prepared as possible for everything ever. And honestly, I appreciate that about him as somebody who has anxiety. Because he does this though, because he finds out that this wolf is supposed to kill him, he gets obsessed and he makes it a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so what happens as this wolf of Loki's is starting to grow, what happens is that, well actually I guess Loki has another famous child, because he also has Sleipnir, but that one's fine. That one we're good with. That one's just like welcomed into the crowd, everything's fine. That's the horse that Odin rides. That's his horse now. Which is like, okay, but that one's fine. They don't know what to do with Hel. She gets her own kingdom. The serpent of his gets tossed into the ocean to eventually just be a problem. But the wolf in particular really had them stressed. And so the only god that would really tolerate him, and it kind of depends on where you're reading it from. I like Neil Gaiman's the best, obviously I've mentioned that a lot, but Tyr and this wolf Fenrir kind of become buddies. He's the only one who will feed him and spend time with him, and it's just like a little pupper. And so he just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and Odin is getting more and more anxious, and so they start a game. And at first, Fenrir's down for it. Cool, whatever. They want to spend time with me. Cool. And so what they set it up as is they're testing his strength. And that they can eventually trust him if this, whatever bondage they put on him, he cannot break. Then they'll release him and know that they can trust him. Well, self-fulfilling prophecy here. They have the dwarves, I think it was, create this ribbon thing that's actually really intensely strong and bind him. But his kind of insurance on that is that one of the gods had to trust him and put their hand in his mouth. Guess which god does that? Tyr. So that's why Tyr doesn't have a hand, because guess what? The gods lie. They never release him. He finds out, obviously, bites off his hand. Tyr understands, because he's a god of justice, so he knows that, like, this is the price he has to pay, because the gods are kind of assholes sometimes. And so the myth eventually is that once Fenrir can break free of his bindings, then he's gonna go get his revenge. And he kills the Allfather. I think he also might eat the sun and the moon, because he's got a big appetite, and is also pissed. And so that's a quick telling of Fenrir. And so a lot of people are like, do not remotely go near that deity. That's a hard pass. But the thing is like, why. Obviously, he kills Odin, but is it justified? Because had he not treated him as he did, would Fenrir have the want to kill him, you know? Or would he fought alongside him? Self-fulfilling prophecies. And a lot of modern commenters and things, I don't know what labels they use, if they're heathen, Austro, Norse, whatever. Modern people have said that it's basically the story as a little bit more elaborate of there's no bad dogs, only bad owners. And so it got me to thinking, as I'm looking into these gods, Fenrir was just like shoved off in the corner of like, oh yeah, he's in the no category, obviously. But it was fine if it was a goddess. Hel usually is kind of got a little bit of a warning label, but I'm fine working with her, absolutely no qualms. And really any of the like goddesses that are like supposedly bad, which could be because we all know Christianity really loved to just like demonize any kind of woman, really. So any that had power naturally would become evil, right? So like maybe that's why I'm a little bit more lenient. But for Fenrir, it was like, why am I falling for this? Why am I allowing somebody else to tell me that he's got a warning label, he's a no? And so I started to look into it, and at first a lot of people are like, no, hard pass. Same things as the Morrigan. He will incite chaos. He's gonna be really demanding of your life and blah, 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 blah. All of these bad things are gonna happen if you call on this god. But then I started to find posts, thank you to Tumblr, that are definitely UPG and that really pisses off a lot of the Norse, Austro heathen communities. They hate it. I'm down for it. Like, me and my husband talked about it yesterday and I was like, is it really gonna hurt anybody if you decide that the fruit to give to like Odin is a pear? No, absolutely not gonna hurt anybody at all, and I don't think Odin's gonna care. You know, you're at least giving something and you're trying. Because of that, it's like, I love UPG. I'm down for it. Maybe I'm also gonna find out that Odin likes pears too. You never know, right? And like, I think because I came from an agnostic and atheist background, I'm still a firm believer that everything we know about the gods is human-made and like it's all just UPG. It's just older or newer. And so a lot of times when people are like, oh, but it's not in the thing, I'm like, it's made up by somebody at some point. And so I don't see the problem in me making something up versus some dude 500 years ago making something up. Probably actually a lot longer than that, but whatever. So anyways, so I started to find things on Fenrir and ways that people work with him. And like the things he stands for is so interesting. And it's like, ooh, if he stands for these things and we're demonizing him, that's interesting. Because it's about self-care that's for you, not what people tell you is self-care. Because a bubble bath and listening to classical music and having a candlelit dinner are not things that are self-care for you. Maybe for you, self-care is incredibly different. It's playing a video game while having a pizza and drinking Mountain Dew at 3 in the morning. Maybe that's what self-care looks like for you. And so it's also about being free, standing up for yourself, people who have been betrayed, also good for people who have like gotten out of like domestic situations. He stands for a lot and is basically a god of freedom because he doesn't have that. And there's like a whole host of things that are associated with him, different offerings to give him, ways to work with him. And of course they always do include like a little disclaimer of like, you know, keep in mind like he is this kind of a god. But you have the same thing when you work with any. If you work with Loki, you kind of know what you're getting into. If you work with Morrigan, you know what you're going to get into. Any of the gods. Even if you work with Odin, if you actually read his myths, he's not like the greatest of figures. He's got some baggage. And so it was just really interesting to see why this god was labeled as bad and as a no-no and do not even go near. When in reality, the things he stands for are very interesting, and it really comes down to, like, Odin self-fulfilled his prophecy, and, like, that's why a lot of people don't work with this god, because he's supposed to kill the Allfather. I found it so interesting that there are gods that, like, instantly somebody else has said no, and you just trust it, and you just back off, and you're like, oh, yeah, no, we don't go near them. When, in reality, we need to start asking why. And if it ends up being a no, that's fine. Like, there's some that I probably won't work with much. There's, like, a couple for, like, the sea that are, like, they're not friendly, to say the least. and like I probably won't do much with them. But at least having some knowledge of them and knowing the why I'm not gonna work with them. Like, I think I just barely was recently researching one for, like, I think her name is pronounced like Ran. She's the goddess of the sea, but like she kind of takes the dead that die at sea where we never find them again, so they can't have like a proper burial. That's like what she rules over. But then there's also an argument that like her hell is kind of, her hall is just kind of a waiting area, and then eventually they go to wherever. Whether they go to Valhalla, they go to Freya's hall, they go to hell, wherever. It kind of depends, but like she doesn't always keep them forever. She just kind of collects their souls, so to speak, out in the vastness of the ocean. And so it's like, that's cool. I don't go on the ocean, so I'm probably not gonna work with her much. But like, again, it just is like finding out my why for why I'm working with ones and why I'm not. And so it was just so interesting that I instantly had like shoved Fenrir off and was like, oh my god, no. And then in reality, there's a lot of stuff that I would like to work with him with and like work through with him specifically, and it's like, huh. So anyways, I would love to hear your thoughts on this down below. Have you gone through this? Do you actively follow the warning labels that are placed on different deities simply because they're there? Do you question them? Why or why not? I'd love to hear from you in the comments down below. So anyways, I would love to hear your thoughts on this one in the comments down below. Thank you to my patrons. I'll have their names over here. If you would like to support me on Patreon and get access to exclusive content, it is patreon.com/nightwillowcrafts. My first tier, you get the shout out. Second tier, you get the exclusive extended discussions for some of the books. Sometimes I don't have notes, but one I am currently reading, we will have some notes coming. And then my last tier is where I post the most frequently, and that's where I am going through the Inner Temple of Witchcraft, and next year I will be talking about my magical year and Outer Temple of Witchcraft. Of course, you also get the vlogs that I post for the holidays that I celebrate, and then a monthly update video just for those on that tier. So if you'd like to support me, it is patreon.com/nightwillowcrafts. Choose whatever option is going to be best for you. And over here on the main channel, make sure to like and subscribe. I post every single day, and until tomorrow, thank you so much for watching, and blessed be.